In decades past, buying a comic book would give you a complete story. But nowadays, the story just continues on, issue after issue after issue. We'll take a look back at some comics from different time periods, different companies, different writers, and see, are these comics any good? Can you read them out of context? What we are doing today is we are going to read a comic book. Well, actually, I'm going to read it, and we'll actually edit out the part where I read it because you don't need to sit here and watch me read it and pull out the dictionary and look up all the big words that are in it and whatever. But anyway, the basic idea is this. Comics, it used to be you'd buy a comic book off the rack and you got a complete story. And nowadays, that's just not the case. Comic book stories go on and on and on. So I have a stack of comic books here. These are from dollar bins, quarter bins. These come from comic book stores and various conventions. And I've bagged them, boarded them, and then I've completely shuffled up this stack. I have no idea what these books are. They're all mixed up, and I'm going to randomly pick one. Now, of course, you know what book I'm going to read because you've clicked on the thumbnail. This is YouTube, after all. Through the magic of video editing, you've seen the time travel of the future. You know what I'm going to read before I've read it. I have no idea what I'm going to pick here because I am picking a book completely at random, and today we are reading whatever this is, Cat and Mouse. Cat and Mouse number 12 from Arcel Comics. So, let's take a moment to read Cat and Mouse number 12. Okay, now that I've had a chance to read it, let's talk a little bit about Cat and Mouse. So this is from Roland Mann, and Cat and Mouse has just recently gotten a revival on Kickstarter, of all places, and only the first 2 issues are out so far. That's part of the reason why I picked this up originally, because I was kind of interested in seeing what the original series was like. The question, first of all, is can this be read as a standalone story without knowing anything else about what happened in the previous 11 issues? Yes, actually, this one works quite well. It's a little weird, though, because at the beginning, there's a little letter here to the reader, and this particular letter says, "This year marks a year's worth of Cat and Mouse. We've tried to give you a crash boom ending to the Tooth and Nail storyline. In talking to Mitch about the story, some of the things we wanted to happen, it was Mitch's idea to kill Nail." Now, I haven't read any of this yet. I don't know who Nail is, but apparently someone named Nail in Cat and Mouse dies in this issue. And they just gave it away on the front page. That's a little weird. I was just going to take him out of operation for a good while. I think killing him was a stronger ending. Mitch says, "Give me a blank slate." I say, "What do you mean a blank slate?" So my plot for him this issue was 1 whole page. So Mitch goes wild with the fight in this issue. But I like it, and I think you will too. So now, having said that, you sure better write some letters now. We got to know what you think about this whole 9 through 12 mix-up. Enjoy. So, interesting. So the story, basically, as I can follow it, is there's a team called Cat and Mouse. And Cat is a dude, and Mouse is a chick, if you will. Kind of a hawk and dove situation. And in this particular storyline, they are in New Orleans, and someone's baby has been kidnapped. And I don't really know who the person is or why their baby's kidnapped, but there's this baby kidnapped, and the person whose baby it is who's been kidnapped, the evildoer is standing right there in front of them, and it's this kind of like tattooed Yakuza female assassin, and she is known as Tooth, and her muscle is a guy with long, sharp claws on his hands, a big, bulky dude, and he is Nail. So it's Cat and Mouse taking on Tooth and Nail, which, a little on the nose, but fine, whatever. It's a little silly. Anyway, there's a lot of baby throwing going on here as they fight to rescue the baby and re-kidnap the baby and free the baby and recapture the baby. The baby goes whizzing through the air and then is re-grabbed and then is lost again, and it makes for a lot of fun as it goes along. As far as the fights go, I was kind of surprised at how well the fights were laid out. A lot of times when they have fights in here, the fights start to take over the storyline. They eat up a lot of the panels. When you read a modern comic nowadays, especially something like Batman, and it gets into the fights, you'll get 5 pages of fights and there's like no story progression going on. This does an actual good job of moving the story along and using the fight to move the story, as opposed to everything just kind of stalling while there's a bunch of kicks and punches going on. Like, it still moves forward, and the stuff in the fight is having its toll on the characters. So every hit, every slice of a sword or from nails is having an impact, and it's causing things to change. There's also a character named Demon, who is apparently a demon. So that's another guy who's there. And apparently Cat and Mouse have been framed for something, and the guy whose baby who's stolen, we find out he's actually a police detective, and so if they can rescue the baby, it shows that they really are heroes, and he's going to help them clear their name. And a lot of this doesn't happen as a conversation of, hey, I'm going to do this, you help me, I'll help you. The stuff is just kind of happening, and as it's happening, things are falling into place, and it makes it a much more dynamic story. It's a lot more fun this way. There is narration. We do get into the mind of Cat as we're going along, and at one point he even mentions that he says, I've got to keep talking. If nothing else, the noise in my head will keep me from realizing what's going on. So the ongoing dialogue that he's having, it's not just there to be fun little banter. It's there to distract him from really the reality of the horrible situation that he finds himself in, dealing with baby kidnappers and almost dying at the hands of these assassins. There's some really neat stuff going on here. The artwork is actually really good. A lot of times when you get comics from third parties, from independent companies, from off-brands, you're never quite sure what you're getting, although to be fair, nowadays there's quite a few DC and Marvel comics that you can pick up, and the artwork just isn't what it used to be years ago. This was actually really good. The one thing that I found weird was the lettering. The lettering just had this really weird style. The O's were a lot more like rhombuses than being circles or ovals. I don't know, it's kind of funky. But I found the artwork very easy to follow. I found the story was laid out really well. The action, the pace kept going, kept everything running. It was easy to understand what was going on. As someone as a new reader walking into this, everything made sense. I was actually pleasantly surprised. This Roland Mann can write some comics. This is some pretty good stuff. Now, I do recognize the name. I know he worked at Malibu, and I don't know how much he wrote, but I know he did a lot of the editorial stuff on like The Protectors and Ferret and that kind of stuff. And I grabbed a couple of those books and threw them in the stack too, so we will get to those at some point down the line. But this really impressed me. How well this read. And in fact, this is one of those books that now that I've read this and I've looked over the whole thing, I think I will go out of my way to try to find some of these back issues. This came out of a random $1 bin from a store that was just called, I think, Books, Comics, DVDs in Terre Haute, Indiana. In a room that was just boxes and boxes piled up of comics for $1. And I just, flipping through boxes and randomly saw this thing and pulled it out. Now I will go out of my way to look for more issues of Cat and Mouse. This was This was really good. This was a lot of fun. This was super enjoyable. And this is a comic book that you can enjoy out of context. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.